This video is going to be a fun comparison. You know that story where Jesus commands a fig tree to die because he was hungry and it didn't have fruit on it when it was out of season? What the hell? Yeah, that's a weird story. There's a story in the Argonautica, the voyage of the Argo, where it's one of the steps along this template, this human life sequence template. And there's a point where they mistakenly have a war with their friends and kill the king that they had just visited and had. And you're like, wow, that's strange. Okay, those two stories right there are the same template step that is on the human life cycle, and I want to talk about that in this video. My name is Dan Paulson. Let's get started. First of all, what is this template I'm talking about? Very quickly, let's just take a look. Okay, these are some things that show up in the stories once you interpret them, and this is pretty fixed. And you might recognize some of these, but certainly not all of them. You will see, number one, there's a selected person. Yeah, somehow whoever is going on this adventure is selected. And up ahead, of course, we've got Jesus. Yeah, he's selected, isn't he? He's God's son. And Jason, he was saved out at birth and trained by a cyclops before he was old enough and began his adventure. He was selected out as well. So there's a selected person there. Generally, the story is going to have something that illustrates cause and effect, and cycles of pain are going to be in there as well. You haven't seen those identified before in this template. Time to begin the inward journey to your, I'll say, happy beginnings. That's our childhood self before we were judging Earth and became our bundle of memories that now we want to interact with to change them. We're not going to want to because it's our bundle of memories. It doesn't feel good, but we want to change our lives. We need the awareness of what to do in the mind first. That would be, you'd recognize that as like supernatural aid. There's going to be a struggle to leave the past behind. It'll be difficult. We generally see those in the stories. We'll see there's a turn inward to the mind right there. That is crossing of a threshold. That is where we're turning inward or going through a gateway, through the narrow gate, through a doorway, through into a tomb, through an opening, into a temple where there is a curtain between the front part and the back part. All of these are ways of telling us that we need to turn inward. They're ways of analogously carrying that story that we have to go through something into somewhere. That's turning inward, crossing the threshold. And we're going to use our conscious and higher self to interact with memories and emotions to begin a process of healing. Face and work with fears till they are no longer fears. This is our healing, our self-healing. In plain language, we must change the way we feel about our memories. Right here, though, we have number 10. We must get rid of the things in life that do not benefit us. We simplify life. That's the step we're on these two right here. That one right there specifically. We need to simplify life. I've got one fish or sheep right there. Those are just reminders to me that those are other stories that are holding this idea that we need to grab onto one thing that is important and significant and let all of the other little things go. Fastest to the world, letting go of stuff, finding a way to disconnect. And that is exactly what these stories are going to be. All right, I want to try to be very clear about what I see. That step sequence along the way, that there's a calling, that not many people are going to do this. That really what has happened is that we have succumbed to life's experiences, and they were what they were. But there's a few people along the way that go, oh my God, I need to interact with this. I'm hurt. I don't feel good. I want to heal. I can face it. I don't have to just live my life with this hurt waiting for something else. I can do something now. So what happens then is this pathway entails the idea that you're going after your memories. They're hurt. They're monsters. They're creatures. They're something that need to be healed. They're sick. They're injured. It's something like that. It represents broken parts of you, basically, of our psyche. But we have to turn inward. We're not going to want to do it. We have to cross a threshold. There's going to be a river, Red Sea, clashing rocks, something that is happening along the way that represent crossing thresholds. Those are always there in the stories. And that what happens is that this sequence of how we turn about and heal, somebody just said, okay, this is what we need to do. Now, turn that outward and build stories on that. Few will call. Okay, we'll take somebody and isolate them. Yeah, they were saved out in this big story from getting killed. We put them in a basket in a river, so they're saved out. That's a Moses story. In this case, we've got, well, Jesus is the Son of God. He's selected, no doubt. The only Son of God? That's like Arthur, the only one that could extract Excalibur. They're called. I'll throw out a fast parallel if you see it. Jesus is called as the only Son of God, has supernatural powers, collects 12 disciples before beginning of his adventure, and basically is seeking the kingdom of heaven within. King Arthur is called as the only one who could extract Excalibur, has Merlin for supernatural powers, hand selects knights of the Round Table before he starts his adventures, and seeks the Holy Grail. Do you see the patterns that are nested in the story? What happens then is the stories are built to contain that, and they're made on that template right there. That is the template. It's the sequence that we turn inward to go face our issues, resolve them, and then return to life with a new self. It's a rebirth. It's a self-healing path. Now, if we take a look at something here, I brought this from the internet. This is a fun, I'll post a link to where you can get this map below. And I won't get into the geography or all of that. We can see Italy up here. We can see the Aegean. We can see the Black Sea. We can see where they're sailing from. But as we zoom in on here, the way that the story is made, it's as if this is where it starts. Step number 1, that is where the adventure begins from. When the calling is underway, we are on a ship with all of the things collected. Up to this point, we've been called, we've been saved as a child, trained, we're old enough, we've gathered up our resources, we are now underway, and we start going island hopping or stopping along the way. Each step along the way represents the next step on the template. So that's what we're going to look at here. And in this case, what did we have? In Jewish material, we have a 7, a 3, a righteous. There's a point in time, Garden of Eden, naked, unashamed, uncovered. All of that fits with this point. So that material continually is referring back to that point right there. Right here, it's not doing that. What it's doing is something different. They're going to the far side of the world, which is the far side of your world experience, to get the golden fleece. And when you get the golden fleece represents that same point. When you get that, you now have control. You now have mastery. If you get to 7, 3, righteous, whatever, you have control, you have mastery. You'd have to see my other material. I'm sorry I stray off on those. It makes sense. It all fits. Okay, I want to read a little bit, just really to get us up to this point right here. And I'm not going to go into great detail on it to keep the video short, and I don't want to do, it needs an entire video on its own to go through the steps for that. We're just making a comparison here. But to get us there, and to show that pattern is there, they've been underway, they've sailed, they're going to the first place. They've left step number 1 behind, they're coming up to step number 2. But with the sun's first rays, there came a calm, and it was by rowing that they reached the rugged isle of Lemnos, where once the Sintians lived. Here, in the previous year, the woman had run riot and slaughtered every male inhabitant. The married men, seized with loathing for their lawful wives, had cast them off, conceiving an unruly passion for the captured girls they brought across the sea from raids in Thrace. The Lemnian wives had for long neglected the homage due to Aphrodite, and this was the angry Cyprian's punishment. Unhappy women, their soul destroying. And okay, I'm going to stop. What this is right here, what this illustrates is us. This is, all of this plays out in our psyche as we do this. Remember, that template was made outward and stuff is thrown on it to make sense. If you know how to read it, if you understand that's what it's doing. It has to play out up here, taking time in a culture where this was your media. This is what you did. If you weren't talking to somebody, these were the kind of things you would have in your mind, perhaps. So the women run. That represents our earlier qualities, our joy, our happiness, our sense of wonder, our forgiveness, our openness, our acceptance. All of those things were young, beautiful qualities. This is going to be, if you read the Bible, where the sons of God defiled the beautiful daughters of men, and there were giants in the earth that were offspring. That's it right here. That what happened is that our early qualities have been defiled, and as a result, we have these big monsters that exist as a result of it. And what they have here is a similar thing. The women and the men, this represents our earlier qualities. When they were combined, they were happy. But what happens is the men go off and get the women were lawful, so they were pure. But the men, obviously, it says here, had in raids and going off and living life, had brought back other things, other qualities. Now, instead of being this chaste quality, I'm going to be this corrupt quality. To be sure, corrupt does not mean I am a corrupt individual. It means that my thinking has gone awry and I have attached to the world. That's what corrupt, anything like that is. What it is I am clinging on to something. So this represents our earlier qualities then going off and living life experiences and judging them, doing this, doing that, thinking this, thinking that, the stuff we want to unwind from later. That's represented by our earlier selves going off and picking up bad stuff. Then what happens is that our inner qualities then just destroy off all of that stuff and we just become rotten. And that's what this represents right here. As the story goes on, we're going to see that there's a difficulty in leaving. Jason off has a couple of kids. Eventually, Hercules is the one that says, we got to get underway. So this is a part that represents that difficulty of here's building what's going on. Here's what's happened. Here's the qualities that we have, but it's difficult to kind of leave it behind. Then we go on to another step, and a few things are going to happen. But what I want to do is jump right to the step that this one is about then. I'll zoom in better on the map right here. We're at step number 5, the Doleons. I won't cover all of the parts of it because there's some creatures there that have to be destroyed as well. But let's just cover the part that really applies to this right here. Okay, Argo pressing on with a stiff breeze from Thrace behind them. That's where step number 4 is. And now they're arriving at step 5. Reached this coast and ran into a harbor called Fairhaven. The Doleons and Cyzicus, their king, received the Argonauts in a friendly spirit, and when told who they were and the object of the expedition, offered them hospitality, inviting them to row further in and more in the town harbor. Here they built an altar. The king himself supplied them with the good wine they had lacked, and also with sheep. He had been warned by an oracle that when some such dedicated band of noblemen arrived, he must receive them with civility and no display of arms. So here we have, there's this connection to something. You're getting something that well, in this case, I don't know, wine. You need some things, yeah. I don't want to read too much into it. Here's how it ends. There's monsters, comes up, there's other things. They finally leave. They loosed the hawsers of their ship, caught the breeze, and forged ahead through a choppy sea. They sailed all day, but the wind began to fail at dusk. Then it veered against them, freshened to a gale, and sent them scudding back towards their hospitable friends, the Doleons. And that same night, they went to shore. But no one had the sense to note that they were landing on the very island that they had left, and in the darkness, the Doleons themselves failed to realize that the Argonauts were back. They thought that some Pelasgian raiders had landed. Macreants, perhaps. So they donned their armor and attacked. And now there was a clash of shields and ashen spears as the two parties met. So what are we reading here? We have the king had just invited them in, gave them wine, gave them all kinds of good stuff. They go kill some creatures that are on the island that I didn't read here. But then they sail on when it's finally time to go. They get turned around, land back on the same place that they just left from, have no idea that they did. And a battle begins. They didn't recognize each other. Their king himself was not allowed to cheat the fates and come home with the battle to his young wife in her bridal bed. Jason, as the king swung round to face him, leapt in and struck him full in the breast, shattering the bone with his spear. Cyzicus sank down on the sands. He had had his span of life, and more than that no mortal can command. We are like birds trapped in the wide net of destiny, and so this man was caught. He thought he had escaped the worst that the Argonauts might do to him, but that very night he fought them and died. And he was not their only champion to fall. Heracles killed Telecles and Megabrontes. Acastus killed, well, there's a few killed here. Let me move on. The rest gave way and fled in panic, like a flock of doves, and a swift hawk after them. There was a wild rush for the gates, and the city was soon loud with lamentation for the catastrophe. Then came the dawn and taught both sides their grievous and irreparable error. So they get in the morning and it's like, oh, it's you. Oh no, we've killed. Yeah. The Argonauts were overcome with sorrow when they saw Cyzicus lying in the dust and blood, and for 3 whole days. 3, that's interesting. They and the Doliones wailed for him and tore their hair. 3 is the time to purity in Jewish material, roughly contemporaneous with this. Then they marched 3 times around the dead king in their bronze equipment, laid him in the tomb, and held the customary games out on the grassy plain, where the barrow they raised for him can still be seen by people of a later age. The king's bride was unable to face life alone with her husband in the grave. Capping the evil she had suffered with a worse one of her own devising, she took a rope and hanged herself by the neck. For 12 days after this there was foul weather and night, and the Argonauts were unable to put out. So we have a 3 and a 12 that looks like it's coming from Jewish material, which is interesting. Okay, there's more details to it, of course, but in its what the part we're looking for right here, the part we want to see is what was killed right there. Why did that have to happen? Why does something like that have to happen? What I'm going to do is next jump right into the Jesus and the fig story, and let's take a look at that one. Okay, the NRSV has a little title right here, Jesus curses the fig tree, and it starts there, but actually the story starts before then. If we back up a little bit, what we're going to find out is Jesus cleanses the temple first. Actually, this entire chapter is where he returns and comes in and rides in the donkey and all of that. But what I want to do is get right here. This is going to be the same thing as the step in the myth template, except that in this case they're walking and going from place to place. It's a different genre of the way that they're creating the analogs, but they're still going to interpret the same thing. Okay, we're going to read this here. Then Jesus, that's myself, whoever is going on the inner journey, whoever has decided, yep, I'm it. I'm going back and healing myself. The temple is what? The temple is myself, my mind, my memories. Jesus entered the temple. I went into my memories and drove out all who were selling and buying in the temple. All the stuff that is in there that is just, it needs to be gone. So the idea is then you drive out all of the things that are in there. It's supposed to be a house of prayer, a place of quiet, but you're making it a den of robbers. This is our life. That's our world. That's that's the world that needs to be flooded, is a den of robbers right here. The blind and the lame came to him in the temple and he cured them. So these represent the things that we're holding inside of us that are not, we've got them hidden away. They're hurt. They're painful. We need to resolve them. But when the chief priest and the scribe saw the amazing things he did and heard the children crying out of the temple saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they became angry and said to him, do you hear what they are saying? Jesus said to them, yes, have you never read, out of the mouths of infants and nursing babies you have prepared praise for yourself. The mouths and babies are the day 7 reference. Hosanna, for anybody interested, if you Google that, it comes up 3 times. Hosanna is fitting on the template of the Jewish material. But then you see right here, he left them, went out of the city to Bethany and spent the night there. Okay, this, if we go back to the Argonauts, what happened? They go to the island and then they leave and then they come back. Here we have Jesus was there, then he leaves Bethany, and then it goes on. What happens next? So that's where it starts. In the morning, he returned to the city. So we've just come back to the island now. And he was hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the side of the road, he went to it and found nothing at all on it but leaves. Then he said to it, may no fruit ever come from you again. And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they were amazed, saying, how did the fig tree die? Or how did the fig tree wither at once? And Jesus answered them, truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only will you do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, it will be done. Whatever you ask for in prayer and faith, you will receive. Okay, let's analyze this. The fig tree represents something growing from our garden. The disciples represent our qualities. Those are the things that we're bringing along with us. Our inner qualities want to know, why are you killing off this tree? But what we're really doing is finding something. Think about it. If it was true, Jesus had the power to kill a tree that couldn't feed him a fig. Then he had the power to say, be heavily laden with figs. Why did he kill the tree instead? There's something else in that story. The fig tree not producing anything represents the things in our life that are not They're not beneficial. They're just taking your time. They're wasting your time. They're things that we do. They're relationships that we have. They're things that occupy our mind space all day long that prevents us from finding that inner peace. Some people keep that stuff going so they never have to look. If you look, you have to stop that stuff. So Jesus has done that right here. But you see the correlation. Both arrive, accomplish some things, leave, back the next day, oops, kill it off, it's not there. Do you see the parallels there? Those are the ones that are, as far as the template here, this means simplify your life. Get rid of those things. And a repetition like that what would that represent? The idea that we're struggling to do this. We try to leave it. We have to come back and resolve it. We have to come back and let it go. I need to let things go, but I'm struggling to let them go. Yeah. Okay. That's how it would interpret if it was on the human life template, how that would work out. And we see the material actually all over the place, but I'm going to end this now to keep the video viewable so that it doesn't get so long people click off. Anyway, hope it was interesting. Feel free to ask any questions below. You got any questions about weird Jesus stuff? Jesus said this. What does that mean? Please, feel free to direct me somewhere. I'd be happy to take a look at it and give you my theoretical opinion. All right, hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video.